Hello, welcome to the December 15th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or you could just simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner will soon be eclipsed as we get questions. So if you don't see an immediate response, we will go through all the questions chronologically as they are asked. But if you don't see an immediate response, you can make sure that, if we could try to avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that just kind of slows down the whole process. I would appreciate that. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's 11, 12, 13, which level of Cubase, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and which operating system, that information is helpful. We should have an index of all the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. And if you want to, and those will include timestamps so that you can navigate directly to that particular question. If you want to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, and we've covered over 30,000 topics since COVID started, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We also want to make sure that you give special thanks to two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They do it to make it a better community experience. So we'll give a special thanks to Agent Decay and to Jazz Dude. We'll also give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his efforts with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. We will be doing, since we are kind of approaching the end of the year, we will do some giveaways today. So starting in about 3 hours from now, we'll do some giveaways. We'll do our Club Cubase live stream trivia. So we'll give away 3 different prizes. So you could kind of pick if you need a Cubase update, you need a Wavelab update, you need an instrument. I don't want to necessarily give a Cubase update if you've already purchased it. You could let me know as we go through a title, and we'll see if we get that sorted out for you. That would be something that would be nice. So Steinberg has been generous to gift some giveaways for today's live stream. So we'll do that in about 3 hours. And again, this will be our Club Cubase live stream trivia. So look for that at about 3 hours from now. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States. And if you are watching us live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first question, I think from Mr. Hyde, says, "Hi Greg, since Cubase 13, the preset folder has moved from the original directory. How if I had to install Cubase 13 on another computer, as it won't work exporting the preferences manager?" So all you have to do is go into, if you need to take all your preferences and presets, is go to your edit menu in Cubase 13. So the folder probably gets moved from the presets, all the settings within the Cubase 12 to Cubase 13, but all you would have to do is come over here to the profile manager, and clear my throat real quick, and export your profile from your Cubase 13 and import on, like, let's say computer A, go to computer B and import that same profile into your other machine. All of your key commands, your global workspaces, your presets, macros, other kind of user-generated presets will all be included with the profile. So again, go to your edit menu to profile manager, and you want to come over and export from one computer and import to the other computer. All right, so we see from Kevin Mehmed, could you show an in-depth overview of how to use spectral layers and how to erase mess up in vocals in Cubase 13 Pro, Windows version, or to erase something else? Yamaha and Steinberg will make money. All right, so, we probably don't have time to go into a super in-depth, but let's go ahead and I'll just open up a project that we could take a look at. So the concept of spectral layers is that, we could break apart different components instead of looking at a traditional audio waveform, which most of us, when we do editing on, will, we edit all of the particular frequencies. But if we want to actually just edit particular frequencies, this is what spectral layers would allow us to do. So if I want to take, let's say, this vocal here,
Side, started losing sight, my play.
So when we want to open up spectral layers, we do it through an ARA2 extension. So when we come here, we'll go to our top inspector tab, our main inspector tab here. And as we expose this, we'll see under extension, and here we could just choose our spectral layers. And let me renew my license. Sorry about that. I'll just dismiss it for now. Sorry. Okay. So now when we look at spectral layers, when you want to do editing, what we see is the particular frequencies. So if at this point we listen, we
started losing sight, my play.
And what we see is kind of the fundamental frequency, and then as we go up, we could think these are the low frequencies, and we see kind of a visualization here of what's going on with the particular harmonics overtone series. So this would be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. The overtone series. So every time that we talk, we have a fundamental. Anytime you hear sound, you'll have a fundamental, and many sounds will have different priorities of harmonic overtones. So what spectral layers is going to allow you to do, if you have something that was like a pop or a click. I had an album I did when I was young where in a very, everything stops and there's a vocal break and the vocalist tapped their foot to the beat. And it was always kind of a nightmare. It's like no one could hear it except me. But what we could do now is, instead of editing kind of the entire audio waveform with spectral layers, we can edit just kind of specific components and specific frequency ranges. So what I could do now is just come over here and say I need to take those particular frequencies out without editing the entire editing the entire audio file, but I could do kind of frequency dependent editing.
Started losing my play.
So if we had something that was like a click or where the singer had hit their foot, we could go in, and spectral layers will offer different tools so that we could now just come over and just take out and select different tools. So you'll have kind of, some different tools here. So if you want it to, just come over, we could say, okay, I wanted to do like just a frequency selection. So I wanted just those particular frequencies. Or if you want to do like harmonics, so I could select this particular part and exclude the harmonics. So if I wanted to just delete that and come over,
I started losing sight.
That we could, do different types of editing. So if you notice that we had something that was more along the lines of, a guitar squeak in your file, you could now just come over here and just take out, a foot bump, a guitar squeak, and take out those particular frequencies. All right. All right. Kevin also says, also show what you get in the free version of Spectral Layers or in the Pro version. Please go in depth. This is good to show what bang for the buck you get with Spectral Layers 10.04. So with the free version, it's going to allow you to do some basic spectral editing, so you get that free with your Cubase license. And as you get more and this would also allow you to extract, if we had a song, we could extract the vocals from the song, whereas if we wanted to go into the Pro version, when we go to export a song, we could extract not only the vocals, but guitars, bass, other piano, drums. So we could come over here and pick different components. There's also kind of a particular some additional selection modes. So as we come over, we could say like, I'm not sure if this is in the I think that if we come over here, we could choose this to be kind of like our smart selection tool. So as we want to say, okay, I just want to kind of select different components here, and this could make kind of like more intelligent choices for selection. And there's also a lot of processes that could be incorporated as well. So when we go to processes, it's going to have like ambience match. We could do like de-reverbing if we wanted to, like we showed on the last live stream. Also, if we wanted to do some additional functionalities, such as like some of those particular processes to like match EQs of different frequencies. Those particular functions are a part of the Spectral Layers Pro that you don't see in the in Elements. There's going to be more capabilities, and if you wanted to really kind of explore, you could just literally kind of just take a get a good idea of what's going on by just getting the trial version of Spectral Layers as well. All right, next question from Kevin. Show out how to activate the free version of Spectral Layers. So once you go to your particular, just come over here. So once you install your Cubase license, all you would need to do is go into your Steinberg download assistant, and your Cubase license is the license for Spectral Layers 1. So I'll just open up this project here quickly. And you would go to your Steinberg download assistant. So since I have a full Spectral Layers license, it's going to it will show up. I can't run Spectral Layers 1 at the same time as Spectral Layers Pro, but if we come over here, we'll go to, let's say, my Cubase 13, and in here we can see the Spectral Layers application, and then all you do is install, and when you start Cubase, then that would include the Spectral Layers 1, which is the light version. It would include the license for it, so you don't have to do any special activations once your Cubase is activated. All right, so Kevin Mehmet asks, is the free version of Spectral Layers upgradable? So since you didn't purchase the copy of Spectral Layers 1, you don't get an upgradable discount. You get the upgradable discount from previous versions of Spectral Layers, or from previous, or if you have Spectral Layers Elements to Pro, but you don't get a discount updating from Spectral Layers 1, which was kind of bundled with Cubase, to Spectral Layers Pro or Elements. So okay, wonderful to see Jazz Dude. We see Miha Vasil. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index. We have Stefan checking in from Sweden. We have Matt Elston, I believe, from London, if memory serves. We have David Griffiths from Melodin in Wales, UK. He's looking forward to a bike ride tomorrow. It sounds fun. Maybe I'll go for a bike ride too. All right, so we have Soren checking in from Sweden. We see Sable Winters from Bay Area in California. We have Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We have AZ Bass Clarinet, maybe Arizona Bass Clarinet. Thanks for joining us. And we see Mihaz from Bucharest. Thanks for being on the live stream. We see Madge Deepers from the UK. Wishing that everyone is safe and well. All right, and we see Nick from Essex in the UK. Thanks for joining us. Always great to see you on. All right. We have Arif B checking in from Holland. We have Rob from Tarpon Springs who asks, and he asks, could you recommend in-depth videos or training resources specifically on using the score editor? You know, there's some over the years within the Cubase YouTube channel, there are some scoring of, you know, functionality videos. I know I've done 2 or 3, but maybe not super in-depth. But, you know, if you have any like particular questions on the score editor, so you might be able to kind of peruse through some of those. A lot of times when people are doing more in-depth scoring, it'll be sometimes, you know, done on the Dorico side. But if there's like a particular functionality you're looking for, Rob, just let us know and I'd be happy to kind of show you. Okay. Wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we see Dallas LaRue asks, after I updated Cubase, an obsolete plugin started appearing asking for an activation code. How do I delete this plugin from my system? So generally, you know, it could be that maybe you uninstalled the plugin, but if it's being licensed through kind of iLok, which is kind of a common licensing methodology and copy protection scheme, that the iLok may still be referencing it. So you may want to try to get rid of the particular you know, reference to that particular plugin within iLok itself. All right, so we see Benny from the UK joining us. All right, and we have Martin from Germany who's using Cubase 13 Pro on Windows. All right, so we see Dallas LaRue asks, can normalization be used for gain staging instead of pre-gain? And can it be used on the master bus to set the LUFS? So generally normalizing, you know, people could use normalizing for a particular audio file. So let's say I wanted, you know, I would say you'd use it differently than pre-gain because normalizing is going to kind of process an existing file. So if I select this particular file, we go to Audio to Processes and choose Normalize. At this point, we could say, okay, I want my loudness normalization to be set to, you know, -14, or do my peak to -12. So as we make changes here, let's say, let's make this, you know, -6. We'll see the waveform of the selected file here change. So when we do this, like often normalizing is going to be based more on the actual file itself. So it's not necessarily kind of like a gain structure. A lot of times people may do it as a process so that they don't have to do as much gain structure. And if you wanted to apply it to a particular file, you know, like to the master fader, since it's not like a real-time process, it's actually altering the original file. What you could do is if we do a mix down, so say if I do a quick mix down of a project and you want it to be kind of optimum levels for deliverables, so I'll just kind of take this, we'll set our left and right locators, I'll do an audio mix down, so we'll go to export audio mix down, we'll choose a stereo track. I'm going to create a new audio track and we'll say export audio. All right, so let's say this is my mix down file. So instead of processing it on the bus in real time, what we can do now is just go to our audio, to processes, to normalize. So let's say I was using this and for Spotify, I could now come over here and say, okay, I want this to be minus 14 LUFS, and now we could have the overall mix down file normalized to kind of the expected standards for you. So it's not necessarily kind of real-time process, but you could process the particular files to make it work for you, and often that could negate the need for doing a lot of pre-gain, or once the file has been rendered, then apply the particular normalizing to a particular level. All right, so we have Arthur checking in from Latvia. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Quellen, hello Greg, how can I delete not used files in a project in Cubase 13 till Cubase 12? It was possible by opening the trash folder by pressing Control P. So really all you have to do is go to your media menu and say remove unused media. So if you wanted to do that, now you could probably also go into, and maybe it was a key command that you had set up, but let's take a look into our media menu. And at this point, you could just say, removed unused media. And I think there's probably an empty trash. So you could use key commands right there, but that would be all you'd have to do. So again, go to your media menu. You could assign a key command for remove unused media that would place it into the trash. And then you could, at that point, empty the trash if necessary. All right, so Amos922 just asks, is there a way to do legato in Groove Agent? So let's take a look. Let's see if it's in my... So, and I assume that this is maybe for doing kind of like 808 kind of low end stuff. So, within Groove Agent, we could restrict the particular polyphony. So let's say if we have something, a Groove Agent project that's kind of set up. Okay, so let's say we come here and I have kind of a file here. So let's say I have like maybe if we have, usually this defaults to kind of like 4. So if I wanted to, we could play up to 4 notes at once. And a lot of times on like 808 low end stuff that may not sound good. So what you could do is just come over here and go to Edit to Main and restrict the polyphony to 1. And then you don't get the 2 notes kind of rumbling together. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. You could also kind of take a particular sample into, not necessarily if you wanted to use the sampler track, has a lot of legato modes as well. So let's say if we go to Media Bay, but our pool, sorry about that. So if we wanted to, just take a particular file into our sampler track, so let's say we wanted to go here. Let me just find a quick 808 bass. All right. All right, so if I drag this and we right click and create a sampler track, at this point we could, place this into legato mode. So as soon as we come over here, we could just, so if you want to do, so as you come over here, we could just say, so we could put it into kind of monophonic mode, and now we could, and if you wanted to set kind of the glide between them, you could come here and, so that's another method, but try restricting the polyphony to like just a single note in Groove Agent and see if that will get you where you want to go. Let me know if that kind of makes sense for your workflow. All right, so we have a question. All right, so AZ Bass Clarinet asks a question on Cubase 12 when cutting at 0 position. Sometimes the selection snaps to the 0 position on another track and not the one I want to cut edit. How could I fix this? Okay, so let's say if we have, let me just jump to a different project here. All right, so I assume that the 0 position is, we have this activated here. So we say snap to the 0 crossing, that when we make an edit, so let's zoom in here. I'll make this the active project so we can do an edit. All right, so if I want to cut, so right now it's not allowing me to cut at the 0 crossing. I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this particular track. All right, so we have our edit here. So I wonder if, so let's say if I cut here, we see that this track is in effect, I cut here, it's only going to be at the 0 crossing when the 0 crossing is disabled. So I wonder if perhaps if the two tracks are perhaps in a folder, and let's say that within the particular folder, if you have group editing disabled or group editing enabled in the folder, that might affect kind of what you're doing. So let's come here, we see our 2, and I'm going to do snap to 0 crossing on 1. So let's say, okay. Just take off my sorry, to have my snap turned on. So let's say that as we do this, we're going to just snap. So it seems like it's always functioning independently, but see if you like maybe your events are grouped together. So if it's like where you take these two events and there we hit Command G, if they're grouped, and you can see if they're grouped by this little icon here in the upper right hand corner, kind of looks like an acute angle. you could do that, but it seems like it's functioning independently for me. But let me know if I'm doing something differently. All right, so we see carousel. It's a problem that many users have. Automation from MIDI controllers showing up as MIDI CC automation. And when I touch the control in my mouth, it shows up as original automation. All right, so let me just come over here. I'll get some MIDI CCs. So let's say I have, let me just go to a different project here. Okay, so come over here. All right. So let's say I want to, so you could define your MIDI CCs. So it could really depend on like how it's set up in your particular system. So let's say I want to come over. Okay, so I have a MIDI CC box here that is, I think, transmitting. So we'll come over to my MIDI inserts, and I believe that when we come here, we'll see that this is going to be CC11. All right, so we have CC11 here that's transmitted on my first fader. So if we record directly into the event, so I'll just come and let's record into the event. So as we're playing, and I hit record. So I'm moving my fader up and down. All right, so we do that. Now that's going to show up as MIDI data because we recorded MIDI data into the particular track. So when we go to edit the MIDI data and we look at, so say, so we see that we have my MIDI CC11 that's written into my part. All right, so let's say we undo that recording, and now if we go to our MIDI and go to CC automation setup, here we could say our record destination on conflict, we want to go to automation track. So now, as soon as I go to record MIDI CC data, I automate the track. All right, and let's see if we now see my expression data will just show up directly as my automation. So it's still in the particular event, but now we can edit it in the automation. So try going to your MIDI menu to CC automation setup and just set the automation track. And what you do is just hit automate and then just play, and then you could automate the settings, and then your CC data shows up as automation directly on your project window. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. Sable Winters saying happy Friday to everyone. All right, so we see John Barry wishing everyone in the Cubase family a festive Bay of Lights from the English Riviera. All right, so Rob asks, are Steinberg VST programs still dependent on the E-license or dongle? I have trouble with Cubase not finding a license for Hallian Sonic Orchestra. So it could be, the Hallian Sonic Orchestra will work under Steinberg licensing. So you may have to, it could depend on your license. So if you got, so Hallian Sonic Orchestra, if you purchased it, if you had purchased it by itself, it would need to be migrated. So if you go to your My Steinberg account, you could see that it would need to be, you would have a voucher to transform from the e-licenser to a Steinberg licensing. If you got it as part of Absolute 5, you would need to update to Absolute 6 for all of your instruments to then migrate. So that license from Absolute 5 was based on the e-licenser, and Absolute 6 is based on Steinberg licensing. So if you update to Absolute, if you have your Howling Sonic Orchestra license within Absolute 5, once you update it to Absolute 6, then it would work. But for the most part, you would, if you purchased the license separately, just, it is, you probably have to go look in your My Steinberg account and look in vouchers, and then you could migrate from the USB e-licenser to the Steinberg licensing for your Howling Symphonic Orchestra. But I think there's one or maybe just a few content libraries that haven't been updated, but just all the main programs are now working. All right, so we see Dallas LaRue says, I'm learning Atmos using headphones. Is there any disadvantage in always working in Atmos? So if you're passing it on to someone to play back in, on their computer, on their phone, on their iPad, or like a streaming service, most times, a lot of people, aren't really, to listen to in a car. Many systems aren't really set up to working in Atmos. So just be aware, if you're always working in Atmos and, you're delivering it to a streaming service that can distribute the Atmos files, and that will, convert it down to, will fold down to stereo. Then, that's fine. But, realize, like, if you're passing it on to, let's say, a friend who's not in the studio, they probably wouldn't be able to hear your music as intended if you provide them an Atmos version versus like a stereo mix version. All right, wonderful to see you, Value from Vienna. All right, so we see Eric B says, hi Greg, I use Cubase 13 Pro on Windows. Question, if I add an instrument track and make 4 MIDI tracks, how can I make the MIDI channels go up in channels automatic? So I think that might have changed when, I'll just try, let me just try to add 4 channels here. So right now, since we've added the MIDI channels, so we could just add the MIDI channels independently for each one. And in 12 and earlier, when we would add channels, they would increment. But now I think in 13, since each channel is added independently, that it may be the same. So I'm going to just try holding down the Shift key and see if that makes a difference. All right, so we'll look at our channels here. Yeah, so try when you go to add the channels and you add 4, hold down. So we see that here we added this would be channel 1. This is channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. I'm going to try without, just to make sure that it wasn't kind of done in 1302. So let me just add multiple MIDI tracks, and I'm going to start with channel 2. So as we do this, channel 2, channel 3. So it looks like in 1302 that would automatically increment, and I think that wasn't the case in the initial release. So it looks like 1302 is incrementing the channels like Cubase 12 did. So let me know if you find that to behave differently on your system. All right, so we have music for World Peace Records from Pine Grove. Great to see you on, Taylor. Okay, all right, so Val asks, since the newest update of my Cubase 13, all the track names are in black. Is there a way to set it back to original white? Thank you, Greg, for your effort. So I think it could depend on the brightness of the particular tracks. So let's say if I came here and we added a color. So let me just go to my project color setup. So I'm going to add another bank of colors here, and I'm going to make one of the colors, let's say, bright white. Sorry, I just open a wrong window again. All right, so let's say I want color 24 to be very white. All right, so we'll make this very kind of bright. Okay, so I'm going to hit Alter Option and click, and we'll make it white. So I know that there is a change that looks like it's still kind of white text for me. I know that there was a change where if we go, let's say, to the preferences, and we go to our track and mix console, and we have like this set to really bright, let's say maximum brightness, that, you know, when we have the track selected for contrast, like at a certain point with the contrast, like if this is white and the font was white, that would, you know, in 1302, that would automatically kind of change the track color to dark. So make sure that if you have this setting, you know, and if you have all the tracks selected, then they would go dark just to contrast, so it's not, you know, invisible. So let me know if you have, like, you know, different tracks selected, or if the colors are bright with that, and that would be helpful to know. But that was like kind of the change in 1302 to kind of alleviate that. All right, so we see Music for Taylor asks, can the Project Logical Editor randomize audio quantize positions like you can with the MIDI modifier? So, you know, it's not randomized so much with audio, so we can't necessarily do that for audio. That's going to be more MIDI based, but with the audio, you know, as soon as we have, you know, we could adjust, you know, once you have kind of the quantize and you have the audio warp enabled, if you want it to come over here and adjust swing amounts, or you could make adjustments within the particular audio quantize preset here to make adjustments so something doesn't sound as mechanical, but it's not necessarily random based, because it's kind of treated a little differently than the MIDI data for that. Sorry, so we have a question. How do you solo a single drum in a drum map editor? All right. Okay, so let's go to a quick drum map here. Okay, so let's say we are here and we're just listening to, and let me just we'll just solo this particular track here. We adjust one preference here real quick for my personal well-being. Okay. All right, so we could say just make sure that this isn't playing just a pattern here. All right, I'll just all right, it used to be just like a solo function that was here. So let me just so we see like just this little in Cubase 13, this little one here. So if I select the kick, I could now just come over here. So now I have, like, I want to select the kick here. I hit this one. We could solo the instrument. So now if I select the snare drum here, so just click kind of right there. And that's how you could solo the individual drums within the drum editor. All right, so we see a question, is there a way to snap to left or right locators? All right, so let's say my left locator is here at measure 5 beat 1. So I think that if we go to edit, we could just say move to so let's say let's say if I have my mouse position there, my cursor position, we could go to edit and we can say move to event starts to cursor. So if you hit 1, if you wanted to make a macro, so let's say my cursor was here, and I'll just check, see if there's okay, so if we wanted to do a macro, we'll come over here. We'll say move event to left locator. Try not to shout. Okay, so I want to come over and hit. so let's add to that command, and then we want to move to okay, so let's say my cursor is here. I want this selected event to move. So we'll just say move event to left locator. So you could do it just kind of like that. So again, if you want to make a macro, that's just transport go to left locator, macro move to cursor, and that way the selected item will automatically move to the left locator. So let me know if that will help, Taylor. All right, so we see from Taylor, is there feature request, place undo buttons on all insert plugins. So some plugins will have insert capabilities in of themselves, but let's say I have an insert plugin on this particular, so I'll come over here, let's go to our black valve compressor. All right, so I move this, come here, we'll move our different elements. So I believe that this will all show up in our, so when we go to our mix console, if we have our mix console undo history, each of the settings that we've made can be undone and redone directly here. So anytime that you want to, just hit Alt or Option plus Z, you could undo, and Alt or Option plus Shift plus Z, you can redo. So you could do that for globally within the mixer. So if you made a bunch of bad moves, just come over here. And now we could go right back. So make sure that you're using, instead of Control or Command plus Z for undo, use Alt or Option plus Z for undo within the particular, so for the mix console history, and all the changes in plugins can be undone. All right, so we have Patricia says, hi Greg, I'm from France. How can I automatically set specific colors to each instrument in Cubase using the logical editor to ensure these colors persist from one project to another? All right, so let's say we have a track like I always use. So one thing you could do is just kind of start off with a template. So if we go, okay, I want to come here, let's do a new project. So I want to start with Groove Agent for drums. And let me just adjust one preference here. Okay. And let's say, okay, I want to have, a Groove Agent. Let's say I want to have the Grand. All right, so let's say the Grand is always going to be red, Groove Agent is always going to be blue. And let's say, okay, I want to add strings from Hallian Sonic, so let's say all right, and my strings to me are always, we'll make it kind of blue and brass. We'll add another Hallian Sonic, and we'll just call this brass. Okay, and brass I want to be bright red. So at this point, I'll just scroll through colors and let's say my piano, I want more that color. So once we have kind of our color set up, what you could do if you want to kind of persist through different projects is we could say, as we start off projects, we could come over and just say, let's go to our file menu and we could save as template. So here we'll call it Patricia. Now I'm going to close this project and we will start a new project. So we'll say new project, and then I go to my templates and we'll say, okay, we're going to go to Patricia. I choose my folder where I want audio files to be stored to, and at this point all of my colors are going to be preserved that we set up. So that will persist. Now another method, if you wanted to have, you know, different instruments be name specific things. So let's say I want to add a track, and let's say I want this to be percussion. And percussion is always going to be a particular color for me. So we could create a project logical editor preset. So if we go to project logical editor, we'll come over here and I want to choose transform. And we're going to say container type is equal to track, and the track, the name. So we'll come here to name and we can say contains, I'll just say PERC for percussion. So let's say if we do like a naming derivation. And then what I want to do is to set color, and we can say set to fixed value. So every percussion I want to be this color. So now we could take any track that has PERC and then colorize that track based upon the name. So what I know a lot of people will do is, I remember we did an interview with the guys from Infected Mushroom, and they're like, kick is always this color. So-and-so is always this color. This is always, bass is always this color. Synth line, lead's going to be this color every single time. And they just have these all set up as different project logical editor presets. They created these conditions for those particular tracks. And then anytime they need to do it, they'd have a macro, and they could say, you know, we want to create a macro that's going to say this includes my my drum colors, my bass colors, my percussion, and all these different ones kind of saved as presets, and they could run that macro and it would go through and rename all the tracks or recolor all the tracks based upon the name using the project logical editor. So let me know if that's helpful, Patricia, and thanks for being on. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right, and once again, just a reminder, we'll be doing our Club Cubase live stream trivia for 3 prizes coming up in about 2 hours from now. So I know the live stream trivia was popular in previous ones. All right, so Soren says, Greg, VST Connect to SE is in Cubase 13 Pro, right? You get to record 2 channels stereo with it, right? So yes, Cubase 13 Pro includes VST Connect SE, and that will allow you to record 2 channels, up to 2 channels. And VST Connect Pro can do up to 16 channels and MIDI. All right. All right, so we see Robbie Bowling says, hypothetical question. I'm trying not to spend money at this time in this uncertain time. So I'm wondering if I can install Cubase on my computer D drive. I haven't tried installing it to a D drive. I don't think it would be any different, but you could give it a try and let me know. Okay. I got your email, Jazz Dude, so thanks for that. All right. All right. All right, so we see from Soren, is VST Connect Performer friendly to a blind person? So, with a blind person, it could be entirely done by utilizing, so the person that's running VST Connect Performer, all the settings can be done remotely from the engineer. So the person just literally has to turn their computer on, and all the settings you could actually drive from your Cubase session. So it should be fine for a blind person. George Conte asks, does Cubase 13 Pro have any Dolby Atmos workflow improvements? So, the Dolby Atmos integration came with 12.1, so there weren't many. I don't think there were any significant changes with the implementation for the Dolby Atmos in Cubase 13 since it was such recently implemented. All right, so we see Kevin Mehmed says, he showed me how to have my own pictures on my music. I did it, but it didn't show up my iTunes. Will there be an update for the track picture and exporting window in Cubase Pro 13, which I own? So I think once you upload it to iTunes, that's when the service would implement the picture, Kevin. All right, so we see question, hello, how to do beat match to remix an instrumental music, for example, if you have a 3-minute music file. So if you have files that are kind of changing in time, I'll just come over here to new project. All right, so I'll just... do new project and just start from empty instead of Patricia's template. All right, so I'm going to import a file here, and let's do just a quick... All right, so let's say this, we don't know what the tempo of this particular file is here, so we'll just kind of listen to it, just so you get a sense. So I turn on my metronome. So there's no real correlation between the track and... I'll take off the loop. So the metronome isn't aligned to the file. So what we're going to do is figure out what the tempo is of the file. We'll go to tempo detection. I select the event. We'll analyze. All right. So now we'll come over here. All right, so I'm going to figure out where the downbeat falls in this. All right, so we're going to say right here. So it's figured out kind of by the beat. And now we'll say, okay, as we do this. So we figured out kind of what the tempo is. So let's say I want to put a drum loop on top of that. So we'll come over here to loops to find something totally inappropriate for it. So let's just say. All right, so I'm going to take this drum loop now, and I'm going to drop it kind of on a downbeat, and we just make sure that this particular file is actually snapped directly And so I'm gonna snap it to the grid, and we're gonna place it into musical mode. So as I come over, so now this loop is automatically speeding up. To match the tempo that was extracted from this file. And if we were to look at our tempo map, let's see. So again, once you figure out what the tempo is, drag any event. If you know what the tempo is, at that point you could just put it into musical mode, and that way these events are speeding up and slowing down to match the extracted tempo from the original file. All right, so Bruno Pock asks how to observe the effects of compression in real time in a waveform using offline processing in Cubase. This allows me to better understand the impact of attack and release. All right, so let's say if I wanted to compress, like we look at this particular audio file here. Okay, so you may not see the effect in real time. So let's say if I come and I'll just put this into just a quick loop. Okay, so if I do compression, here we can say, okay, I want to, so let's go to my processes to normalize. All right, and I'm going to cut that, and let's just do a plug-in. So let's say I want to go to dynamics. And we'll say, okay, let's do the black valve. So now as soon as I, do that particular process, we could see the actual waveform change to reflect that. So, but if you want it, so, since that's not happening in real time, you could just come over also. Let's see if we could maybe do it in supervision. So let's say as we're playing this, I'll get to my inserts, and let's look for under analyzer, and we'll get to supervision. So let's say we want to see our waveform. So let's say we have our wave scope here. All right, and I want to add a wave scope below it. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just kind of work on this one. All right, so now let's say if I come to this setup, let's see if we could change the monitoring path. Okay, so let's say we do mix down here. And I'm going to just apply the compression. So if we want to see kind of the impact of the compression, I will come over. So let's get to black valve. And see if we could get So I think if we choose, let's see if we come here, if we'll, so we could see kind of the impact when we go to, like, let's say the mix down here. So here we could see kind of the change of the compression on the waveform. So if we have like no compression here, we put lots of compression. So starting off, we'll see that a visual representation of the processing kind of baked into the waveform there, if you wanted to see it like that as well. Okay, so we have a question from Robbie. Hi, Greg. This might be a weird question, but how can I get better definition on my bass tracks? It seems they're missing high end. EQ doesn't do the trick. So, it could really determine on the bass part. So sometimes if you add high end to a track that has no frequencies, that it may not really have that much of an impact. So let's take I'll just show you here on where we have an isolated bass part on this kind of a hot mess project here. So we'll just kind of, so let's say we'll listen to this bass as a bass part I played with Michael Teams and Pablo and Gareth Kitsch. So when I come over here to the EQ, but if there's no kind of frequencies or harmonics to really deal with, so let's say I'll just come over here and do kind of a, say if my bass sounds like that and I take it to a particular, let's say I'll add this to a group channel and I go to EQ the group now and I boost the highs, you may not really hear much of a difference because there's no harmonic content to boost. But if I come here and let's say we'll bypass, so it could be that sometimes people record bass with no high-end information. I always like to think of bass as kind of being a good amount of lows, mids, and high frequencies to work with for clarity, so that the bass can kind of cut through and kind of excite your ear in those particular frequencies. So, but if there's none of those frequencies are present in the particular file, then adding EQ, there's nothing to really accentuate. So it could be kind of the source that's causing the problems. But if you have a file that you want to send to me, I'd be happy to take a listen to it and take a look at it. All right, so you see from Amos 922, so there's no way to do glide in Groove Agent. So yeah, it's really more designed for sampler track functionality. Okay, so Robbie says also, I noticed that when in Cubase 13 Pro Notepad and you click on the X to get out, Cubase crashes. Let's give it a shot. Go to project, and we'll just go to our Notepad. Take some notes here. All right, and I'll just close. So didn't seem to be a problem. Let me know if you're doing 13.02 or not, which is released on Tuesday. Okay, Bruno asks, in the mix console, is it possible to drag and drop an insert effect from one track to another? All right, so let me just add a couple audio tracks here. All right, so we'll go to our full screen mix console. So let's say we go to our inserts. So let's say I have an insert here on my bass. So let's say we do our VST bass amp. So if I want this, I could just drag it to another track with all the settings preserved. So let's say I come here. I want my cabinet. So make kind of classic SVT. So now if I wanted to make a copy of that, I would just hold down the Alt or Option key, and now all the settings would be preserved. So you could just kind of drag and drop. And if you have multiple plugins, let's say, okay, I'll come here, and we have multiple effects going on. And then at that point, we could just kind of grab from here. Let's I think if we just it's like if we that you could, even if you right click, copy, and come over here, paste, you could just copy and paste between. But if you want to do just like single plugins, you could just hold down the Alt or Option key to drag them across. All right, so we see from AZ Bass Clarinet says, yes, the 2 tracks are in a folder. So see if you actually take them out of the folder if you have the same behavior. All right, so Robbie also asks, and I don't know what's happening to my events, but every time I try to select multiple events that are not on the same track, it seems much harder than in Cubase 12. Okay, so let me just, I'll just put a bunch of files on here. So I don't think anything is kind of really changed with that. So if I want to, select this file, this, and that to move, I'm just holding down the Control or Command key. If I want to make a copy, come over here, hold down the Alt Option key. But I don't think anything has really changed in regards to that. Check to see if you have them maybe in a folder, and if they're grouped together, like if we have like Command G, whereas when I move one of these events, these 2 events are kind of grouped together. That may cause some issues, but I don't think anything's really changed with that. But let me know if I'm doing something differently. All right, so we see a question. What is the purpose of ASIO Guard in Cubase? All right, so what ASIO Guard is going to allow us to do, and we could access ASIO Guard if you go to your Studio menu, to Studio Setup, and we'll go to the audio system. All right, so when we have, let's say our audio interface is now running at a buffer of 256. Okay, so now that we have 256, we're running, let's say we want to run our buffer at 256. Now tracks that are already existing, and the buffer size is really critical when we're dealing with like recording in real time. So if we wanted to, play back virtual instruments, We may not, if we're recording one track and we have 127 tracks of virtual instruments, the track that we want the lower latency, where it's more critical, is on a track that we're playing or that is record enabled. So what ASIO allows you to do is to have the track that is record enabled, that is kind of, you know, more active in monitoring the audio, that will run at 256 samples, and the other tracks will run at a higher sample buffer size. So this way you don't have to totally kill your entire system to record one track of MIDI at the end of a project. So the other tracks will run at a higher latency. So whatever track is record enabled or monitored runs at the latency, and the other tracks run at higher latency, so that you could have better recording and better real-time performance for recording and monitoring instruments or audio during the recording process. So ASIO allows you to kind of run a hybrid low buffer for the recording and monitor tracks, and simultaneously a higher buffer for tracks that are just simply playing back. Okay, Lauren Gabrice asks, hi Greg, can we apply a tape slowdown effect on project tracks in Cubase? Thank you. So there's kind of two different ways of doing this. So I'll just revert this. So let's say I want to do this project, maybe highly inappropriate tape stop, but we'll show you how you can do it. So one of the plugins that you'll have, let me just set my preferences one more time here. Okay, so let's say I want to do, so I'm going to go to my master fader, and there's a plugin, it'll be under the other category called Loop Mash FX. And what we could do now is this will have all sorts of different kind of like, you know, different effects, like performance effects. So if I come here and do, if I want to, and I can set like 16th note pulse. So again, we could have different effects, and one of these effects that we'll have will be so now I can just hit this button and kind of do like a speed up the pulse of it. You just have this kind of sync to the project tempo. Grandmaster Flash. And if we wanted to, we can see that this would be like a B. So we could just say, okay, I want to come over here. Let's add a MIDI track. We see that these are kind of aligned. We could say my MIDI output is going to go to, we'll come over and say, so we'll say it's going to be going to Loop Mash FX. So now we could just take a particular MIDI track here, and as I play, I could use my MIDI keyboard and trigger these. So I could just kind of sequence in a part here. So say this is our loop mash, and hit record. So we could. So at this point, I could just record a particular MIDI note, and you could do like tape drop effects just like that. So let me know. There's another method that you could use, but I think that this might be the fastest method. So let me know if that works for you, Lauren. But again, play around and you'll find this plugin under Other. So we come over to and you'll see it as Loop Mash FX. So you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. And thanks for being on Learn. All right, so we see Soren says, Greg, I have Absolute 4 and upgraded all the way to 5 to 6. I have a thing called Flux in Halion Sonic, and all of its patches are red and not existing. What's with that? So Flux is actually comes with Cubase, and I don't think it's a part of Halion Sonic. So when we go to your Steinberg download assistant, make sure that you've downloaded the Flux version for Cubase 13, or it could be, so when you come over here, we'll go to your My Steinberg products. So let's say you get a Cubase Pro 13, you probably just need to come over, and I think we would see, let's see, Flux it might be under the Halion Sonic content. So I think it's going to be in, so make sure that you have like the Halion Sonic content, that this is installed for you. And then because Flux is part of the Cubase license, it may come in the Absolute license, but I think it is part of Cubase. So it could be just your Cubase license. Maybe you need to reinstall the content again to work with the new licensing. All right, so we see, I think from Mr. Hyde, sorry, I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong with the characters. It says, Greg, sorry, but with the Profile Manager, we can't export Cubase 13 preferences fully with Cubase 12 did. Have a try, the file will be a lot smaller. So I think you can, but let me know if there's like a particular preference that you're not seeing. Let me just change one other thing. All right. But, it's always going to be like your preferences. You can manually copy the preferences folder, but let me know if there's like particular preferences that aren't being carried over with the Profile Manager. If you could let me know that. Okay, so, and then we see kind of verification. It says, Greg, please check the Cubase 13 preferences directories and compare with 12 and try to find the logical editor preferences. So if you're looking for your logical editor presets, like once you come over here, so these will be stored in kind of a different location. Let me just add an instrument track. All right, so let's say we go to the logical editor or project logical editor and we go to your presets. If it's your user presets, come over here and just click on show user presets location. And then at this point, you will see all of your files. So you can see all of your logical editor or project logical editor presets will all be stored here. So those aren't necessarily preferences, but these presets will be stored. And you could just manually copy these over from 12 into 13. I'm pretty sure that the Profile Manager would include that if you're going to a different computer, but this is how you could access those folders. So again, just come to the Project Logical Editor in the preset area. click on Show User Presets Location, and then all of those will be, you could just copy those folders, do the same thing in version 12, copy it to version 13, 13 to 12 if necessary, or to your new computer. All right, so we have Pastoral Apologetics checking in from Texas. Thank you for joining us. All right, we have Nancy says, hi Greg's greetings in advance from Egypt. Thanks for joining us. Not sure if we've had someone live on from Egypt that's introduced themselves, so thank you. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right. Let me find my spot. All right, so you see Music for World Peace Records says, is it possible to revert back to an earlier update? So if you still have the installer, I believe that you could still do it. And it's just a matter of uninstalling and reinstalling the previous version. If you can't find the previous version, let me know, and I'm sure I have a download of it that I could share with you if needed. All right, so we see Soren asks, Greg, the free taped vibes, how do I get it installed? I don't see it in Hallian Sonic. Where is it? So there is a new instrument that was released yesterday called Taped Vibes. So if you want to check it out. So once you kind of, download it, install it, it'll take you to the Steinberg Download Assistant. So we'll come over here. So we'll go to your Download Assistant. So once you kind of click on it, so you kind of register it with your My Steinberg account. It'll then show up in your My Steinberg. So once you click on the link, it'll show up in your Tape Vibes. Make sure that you install. So it says install again. So this indicates that it is installed because I see the check mark with the green box. So green is good. Check, good, it's installed. And then once we want to access it, we would just add like a Hallian Sonic or Hallian track. So we'll add our instrument track. We'll choose Hallian Sonic. And now we'll just come over and we'll see Taped Vibes to show up right here. And as we work with this, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's a free plugin, so everyone could use a Wurlitzer. So free is good, especially before the holidays. So, but make sure that you've done that, and you may also have to. It should automatically activate. If you don't see it activated, you can go to the Steinberg Activation Manager, and then you should see it under your activated list right here. Tape Vibes. So if you see it in your not activated, just come over here and choose to activate it, but you may have to just physically turn on. It should automatically connect, but if you don't have one of your things logged in for your My Steinberg credentials, then you may have to manually activate it after installing. Heartbreak Time Machine says, hey, I think I found a weird bug in Groove Agent. Should I send an email? So, sir, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see question. I saw a documentary about the classic 90s Eurodance track Scatman, and the display on the producer's Atari ST was clearly Cubase. Could Cubase 13 conceivably open a file that old? So what you would need to do is when we came out with Cubase SX, that switched the file programs from a .all to and a .arr, which were the extensions on Cubase VST32, going back all the way to Cubase Atari version 1. So when we came out with SX, that's when it switched to .cpr for Cubase project and .npr when Nuendo was released for a Nuendo project. So if you were able to get if you had like Cubase that's running on eLicenser such as 11, you could download Cubase SX3, and up to Cubase SX3 you could import a .all or .arr file and save that as a .cpr file. So I did this like 6 or 7 years ago with the wonderful guitarist Alan Holdsworth, who's just like so amazing to hang out with and spend time with and talk music with, because he had a bunch of his files on Cubase for Atari, and we spent an afternoon converting them all to I think it was Cubase 9 on his Mac when he got it updated. You could do it. You would need to access a Cubase SX3, and that will run with like a Cubase 11 and earlier license. So if you don't have the ability, if you just got Cubase at 12 or 13, you may not have a license to open that up, but there's lots of people that do. But you can still migrate those projects from, almost 35 years ago at this point. All right. So we see from Val, it says, question, since Cubase 13, I can't track anything to the first pad in Groove Agent, only starting from the second row. I found a workaround, but can I somehow update that? All right, so we'll add a Groove Agent track here. Okay, and let's say I'll do a full Groove Agent. So let's say, it could be sometimes when I hear this, it could be like, okay, I want to take, sometimes people will try dragging a sample. Looks like this automatically converts over, but make sure, like when I'm dragging a file over, it's automatically placed stop that. So let's say just dragging it onto a pad that we can trigger there. I'll try it just with Groove Agent SE, see if the behavior is any different, which is included with Cubase. So it doesn't seem like I have any problems, but let me just check, because sometimes I know some people will drag the file over. It looks like it now will change it automatically. I think in previous versions, if you dragged an audio file and the pattern pad was open, that it would automatically work. Now there's also, like, if there is an existing sample in there, you may have to, so let's say we're on an instrument pad, we could replace it by when we have the two, so with a new pad, I could drag a sample. We see 1 star, 1 box, 2 box, 3 boxes. So if we have 1 box, it'll place it onto that pad. If we want to replace the sound, we could just go to where we see the 2 boxes, and that we could update the sound. Or if we had multiple pads selected, we could hit the 3 boxes, and that will map it across multiple pads for you. So, but it seems like everything is working as expected here, Val. So let me know if I'm doing something differently than you. Okay, so we see from the Heartbreak Time Machine, maybe this is his issue he's running into. It says, when dragging a pattern, Groove Agent will add a MIDI metronome note on A#2. Is this intentional? Never did that before. All right, so let me just go where we have kind of a quick pattern. So I guess I can just do it right from here. Okay, I'll try Beat Agent and Groove Agent, an acoustic agent. Okay, so let's say now I'm going to so we go to the patterns here, drag it out. Let's look. So we'll just switch to the drum editor. All right, and let me just check the, I think you said A#2. So no patterns there. Let me try with an acoustic agent kit. So if you can let me know if it's every kit that's doing it or one particular kit. So let's do just a quick studio kit. Okay, so we'll have a pattern here. Okay, so I'm going to drag that over. Let's take a look at this. We'll go to our drum editor, and we'll see if A#2. So no A#2 as metronome. You know, one thing that it might be that you could check is just going, and then you see this little function here where you say, okay, Omni. If you just click on the MIDI icon just to the left of that, you can say, and then you could separate kind of, you know, the pattern pads could have their own dedicated MIDI port. So try before you drag it in to see if that is enabled, if that makes a difference. And if you know exactly, like it's doing it with this particular preset, but you know, I tried an acoustic agent and a beat agent, and it didn't seem to be doing that for me. But let me know if it's, you know, what kit you're using, or if it's a kit that you had made. All right, so we have Influential Gurning just saying Merry Christmas. So thank you so much. Looking forward to having some time off over the holidays. All right, so we see from Nancy, can we save our own chord pads as presets in the Media Bay in Cubase? All right, so let's come over here. Let's just make sorry, I'll just come over here. Okay, so let's say we want to come over here. We'll just now come over here. I think that we could just save the preset. So we'll call this Nancy, 2 Y's. Okay. So we come over here, we could see that. Let's come over to the media bay, like the full media bay, and we'll come to media bay, and we want to say it's probably just going to be under user content, and let's see if we could just I'll just rescan the disk here real quick. So I think it would show up in under here, but it is showing up in the chord pads. It might just have to kind of refresh. But if you come over here, once you save the preset, you can just simply open it up directly from there. So let's see if we want to reveal in Finder. We could see so we can see that followed by .chord pads, but let's see if we can find it. And it doesn't look like it's showing up in the chord pads, but I don't see it as one of the media types for the chord pads, but it does show up within the presets for within the chord pads itself, but it may not show up in the big overall encompassing media bay. So. All right, so we have Mohammed Salah just wishing everyone Merry Christmas. Thanks. All right, Heartbreak Time Machine is smash the like button. All right. Okay, so we see from Carusella says it doesn't solve the automation problem. I'll be more accurate. Okay. So we see how to save videos in the media bay. So again, once you have videos, we could come over. Let's go to media bay. I want to go to, let's say, this computer. We will look in documents, and I'm looking for video files, and then that will show all of the video files on whatever directory we have selected here. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine just says, always forget there are two undo trees, one for the editor and another one for the mixer. Yeah. All right, so we see from Soren, hi Greg, workflow problem for me. I need to erase the automation point with my tool eraser, and I can't find the exact hitbox for the erase. I spend ages on erasing a point every single time. All right, so let's say we have automation going on here. Okay, so let's say we zoom in and I wanted to erase, I guess, a single node. So let's say I wanted to erase this node. So you could just come over here, use the eraser tool, kind of use the bottom as the basis for it. But if you say, okay, I want to erase this, you could also hit the delete key, and that will automatically delete that automation point once you have it selected. So let me know if that helps, Soren. All right. Okay, so you see from Carusella says I want the automation with my MIDI keyboard shows as if I'm touching it with my mouse. Okay, so let's jump back. I think we were on this project. Okay, so if you want... All right, so I'm just going to go to my MIDI, and we'll go to our CC automation setup. So I have this going to an automation track, and I'll go to my automation panel, and we'll go to settings, and we'll say reveal parameter on right. So as I go to automate this, I'll move my CC11 fader. It's now just... So I'm just moving my choice sauce controller here. And then it's just writing it directly as automation, just as if you were doing it with a mouse, I guess. So let me know if that is what you want to do. All right, so we see Mohammed Salah says, I have one question about Groove Agent. When I drop loops inside it and slice it, I take the pattern to the project window, all velocity 127. There's no dynamics. Thanks. All right, so let's go ahead and go to a different project. We'll take a look. So we're not actually, altering the dynamics of the original loop. I'll just revert this project quickly. So I think that the goal is to have this, playback. So let's say we'll come over to our Groove Agent instance here, and I'll clear the kit. I'm going to drop this loop in. We'll slice the loop. We'll create our slices. We will adjust our sensitivity. Let's do it on a different loop here real quick. Okay, so let's say I have this particular loop here. Okay, we open up Groove Agent. I'll just cut. All right, so drag this. Let's create our slices. All right, so now when we drag our pattern over, it will be, the velocities will be, all set. So we'll come over here, and that's because it hasn't done any dynamic aspects. So when we play this particular file, it's going to sound exactly the same, but you could just simply, change the dynamic contour, but it's not affecting the original dynamics of the audio file, because that dynamics of the original audio file is automatically carried over. So if we come here, so the dynamics will automatically be maintained. It's really more of the position that's going to be altered. So if something is soft here, when we have that slice, it's going to be soft on the particular slice as well, because it's not really affecting the dynamics, and that's why you have the same velocity for all of the events, so that it does sound the same. It's not translating the velocity, the dynamics of the event into velocity, because the event is still being triggered. So that way it sounds exactly the same, which is kind of the intention of it. All right, so you see music for World Peace Records. The mix console undo is fine, but what if you want to undo something you just did on a plugin several moves ago, and there are other plugins between present and the one you want to undo? So it will be a linear undo history. If you wanted the ability to jump around between, where each plugin has its undo history, that could get very complicated, and then all of a sudden your project could grow exponentially. So I think at a certain point, be happy that you can undo it. You could save a track preset on your particular tracks if you need to. So, if you have altered the snare track and you need to undo the bass track, you could save it as a track preset, or save the project under a different name and then go back. So there's a lot of ways to kind of get around it, but I think being able to undo your mix console, history is pretty good, even though it will be linear. At a certain point you have to, work on, think of the implications of, of how a project size could be affected by that as well. All right, so we see, hi Greg, can I map a MIDI controller to a MIDI modifier control parameter in Cubase 10.5 or 11? All right, so let's say I have I think we could do it with the MIDI plugins, the MIDI modifiers on the plugin. So let's say if we go to your MIDI inserts, you'll have your MIDI modifiers here. So now let's say let's go to my MIDI remote, and let's say I have on here, let's go to my Chord. So I'm going to have my quick controls for this particular track. So my knobs here are doing quick controls, so that when we go to our quick control settings here, we could adjust. So if I wanted to adjust, let's say, and if I wanted to select a particular value here, I could click on Learn on the quick controls. I could move this particular parameter, and now unclick Learn. And now when I move my quick control here, we could adjust the parameter for volume. Let me make sure I did this right. So now, as soon as so you could click in the particular lane here and say, okay, I want to learn this quick control, and click on the L button, move the parameter here. So I'm using this quick control. I accidentally clicked in the second lane. And then at that point, I could control this parameter using the quick control. So click on L to learn, move the parameter, click on L to to stop the learn mode, adjust a parameter, and then you could adjust different parameters in your MIDI modifiers using MIDI CCs. So set up your MIDI CC controller just to do quick controls, and then you could quickly navigate to there. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so in just about an hour, we'll do our Club Cubase live stream trivia to win 3 Steinberg titles. And the titles could be up to your choice depending on what you have or don't have. So look forward to that in about an hour. Again, these are trivia questions based on live stream attendees and discussions we've had. All right, so we see Eric Ross asks, or how can I control MIDI velocity with my expression pedal in real time as I'm playing my MIDI controller? So, generally MIDI velocity isn't a MIDI CC, but it's a value that's attached to the particular note message. But I think if we wanted to come over, I don't have, that we could perhaps use the MIDI input transformer. So let's see if we come over here to our input transformer. But generally, it's, you can't really adjust, if you have the MIDI note, that velocity is going to be tied directly to the start of the MIDI note. And if you, adjust, let's say you hit the MIDI note and you move your expression pedal, while the note is still being held, that's not going to translate, because the continuous controller is often different than having a, for real-time performance. If you hit the note and then move the controller while the note is still being held, that velocity is only a part of the MIDI note message and not a CC message. But we may be able to let's take a look at taking, and there may be, okay, so let's say we want to take, so we want to take this to take a MIDI note, and we will choose velocity and see if we could transform this. So this may not give you what you want, but I will just place this track into record.
In the end.
So let me just record on this MIDI track here.
In the end.
Okay, so I'll take a look, and let's look at it in the key editor. So here we could see, yeah. So I think since since you could have varying values and not at the particular note on message, that it probably wouldn't translate to what you want to do with the velocity. So let me know if that makes sense, Eric. All right, wonderful to see. Ash Rebel Hen Studios says, Greg, still knows anchoring tracks in the fader console still loses preferences when opening multiple projects. So I had passed that along. I'm not sure if it's, I don't think it's been addressed yet, but I will pass it along again. So wonderful to see Sir Robert, the Key Terminator from Atlanta, dropping in. Great to see you, buddy. All right, so we have Patricia just says, hi, Greg, sending you lots of love for what you're doing from Algeria in North Africa. Thank you so much. All right, so we see Music for World Peace Records asks, do you foresee Dolby Atmos ever making its way into what is now stereo audio streaming services? So I think a lot of them can transmit into, transmit like immersive audio. So I think that I know some people that are releasing immersive specific titles because it gets kind of a higher priority over the other 119,999 tracks that are submitted every day on a streaming service. So some feel that it gives them an edge and that they might be noticed more if they do immersive. So I think it's kind of available. I'm not sure if the end user is really seeking it out yet. So I use my next door neighbor who's super smart guy. He was, like a pilot for Air Force Two, flying vice president and Secretary of State around, that kind of guy. And, he can never figure out how to get, his Atmos working in headphones and just gives up every time and comes over to my house frustrated. So I'm not sure if the customer is ready for it, but I think the streaming services and Dolby obviously wants you to do that. And now there's, MPEG-H from Fraunhofer. There's competing formats. You have Sony 360. You have Google and Samsung also doing an immersive surround. So I think, it's a great thing about standards is that there's so many competing ones. So we'll see if it makes kind of more mainstream. So. All right, so we have a question from Patricia. How to save a quantization groove in Cubase created from a human-played acoustic drum to apply to other MIDI parts later. So let's say this is our acoustic drum part here. All you'd have to do is, if we double-click, we go into the sample editor. We'll go to hit points. So we could adjust kind of our threshold for the hit points. And then from the Create sub-tab here, at that point, choose Create Groove. And then when we go to our Quantize presets here, that groove is automatically saved, and you could apply to other audio or to other MIDI performances. So once again, double click, go into the hit point editor, go into the sample editor to the hit point tab, click expand to create options and choose groove, and then it's automatically loaded directly into your quantized panel. Okay, so we see Mickey's Productions. Hey Greg, how do you automate Apache SX, and also how do you do note repeat easily? All right, so let's say we want to come up to, all right, so I'll select this. Let me just turn it down to kill. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Let's load up the Apache SX. So let's say I wanted to automate, let's say step size. All right, so this would be very similar to what we did just a couple minutes ago. So when we look at this, we will go to our quick controls. I'm going to select my first tab here, my first slot. So do that, click on learn, and now I want to adjust this control. Okay, so now we want to come over here. If I did this right. Let me just turn on learn. All right, let me just move all of my quick control assignments. Okay, so now we have step size. So now when I want to come over here, we can play. And I will just switch this here. And I could use my knob here in my MIDI remote to, so I could just adjust the knob here to switch. And automate different parameters. So again, just on the quick controls, you want to just click on learn, move the parameter, and then you could adjust directly there. All right, so let's see. Under the second part, also how do you do note repeat easy? So an easy way to kind of do note repeat is if we go to your MIDI inserts, and then there's a plugin that's really powerful. It's often overlooked. So we'll go to our MIDI inserts. Let's say instead of our Apache SX, there is a delay. So we could just choose or a MIDI echo. So what we could do is just come over here. And if we don't want it to descend in pitch, we can say I'm going to set my pitch offset to 0. And we can say, okay, let's make this align to 16th notes. And if you wanted to come over here to factory presets, you could do like 8th note echoes. Or if you wanted to do more pattern delays. So you could experiment with the MIDI echo plugin for doing note repeat stuff. Yeah. All right, Manuela77 asks, hi Greg, how to work with Groove Agent and Beat Designer together? All right, so we'll come over to forget the past here, or I'll just select this particular file. Let me just open it. Okay, so let's say I load up a kit here, and we'll have so unmute this. All right, so I'm first going to come over here, and since we're using Groove Agent, we're going to say I want to go to the name, and I'm going to select the, we could have it automatically create the patch name script or like the drum map. So now we'll come over to our Beat Design plugin. We'll activate it. I'll just choose a, so now I'm going to hit play. And I'm just going to come over here. And now as I play, we could just kind of adjust the velocities. Let's say And we could choose our different instruments, and this is automatically extracted from the drum map. So we say, okay, I want this to be clap instead, so we'll come here. And let's say, okay, I want to maybe augment that with the snare on 2 and 4. And let's put in some hi-hat. And maybe we'll put in some flams. And maybe some percussion. And so, and now if I wanted this into my project window, we could just kind of click here and we could insert at the pattern at the cursor, at the subbank at the cursor, fill loop with pattern. So you can say, okay, let's insert it at the cursor, and now that particular pattern will automatically be carried over directly into our project window. So that's how you could use Beat Designer and Groove Agent together. All right, so you see Robbie just says Notepad crashing is probably a Windows problem. I'm on 13.1. So yeah, I'll try it on my Windows PC, but I'm pretty sure I did use it recently on my Windows machine without any issues. All right, so we have Jorgen checking in from Denmark. Thanks for being online today. All right, and we see, always wonderful to see JVI from the Netherlands. All right, Nick is saying he's on Win 10 with 13.02 and the Notepad is fine for him. All right, so we see just from Hafergut Music. Hi, Greg. When I reinstalled Cubase Pro 13, it said that the Flux library for Halion cannot open in the download manager. It said I have to change permission in order for it to reinstall. So check to see, if you are installing it from the download manager as its own instrument, or if you're doing it as a part of the Halion Sonic content within the Cubase area. All right, Manuela77 asks, when I record MIDI, I experience a delay. I have to manually move my MIDI notes, and it's worth noting I don't have any audible latency. So if it's like recording early or late, it's probably you're on Windows systems. So if you go to your studio menu, to studio setup, and then when you go to your MIDI port setup, and we don't see this on the Mac OS, but you'll see different settings kind of in this area of your MIDI port setup where you could choose to ignore port filter or use emulated ports. Try adjusting those settings, and that will probably, some combination depending upon the driver for your MIDI interface, should allow you to record it on time. So again, try the different combinations of ignore port filter, use emulated ports, and that will probably take care of it for you. See Nick just saying hot mess remix. All right, Heartbreak Time Machine just says Loop Mash is so fun in VST Live. All right. All right, always wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. So we'll see our virtual ice cream distribution probably started about 55 minutes ago. Trying to catch up. All right. All right, so we see from Studio 7, Casimo. Hi, Greg. Is there a notable difference between a USB 3 and USB 2 sound cards in terms of low latency? So some of the drivers can take advantage of it. So I know like the URC interfaces that there is a setting, and it could depend upon your chipset. So it can be a little bit lower. I don't think it's like a huge difference. But there is like in the URC interfaces on Windows, you can have a choice where you could say, enable USB 3.1 super speed technology or something like that. So it's not on all chipsets that allow you to take advantage of it. So there is a slight difference. It's not like, having it's not having the latency, it could take you from 6 to 4. On a low latency setting or something like that. So it can make a subtle difference, but not every USB chip will take advantage of it, which is why in the Yamaha drivers, there's kind of you could turn it on or off and see if it works on your particular system. All right, so we just see from 8 Moon Beats, how would you organize multiband processing on one channel? It says, possibility of inserts to split signal in band, process them independently with any plugins at the end summit. So if you wanted to, let me just do it on a different project here. Let me just okay, so let's say I want to only do flanging on a particular frequency range. So I'll just kind of pop over here. Let's so on the insert, I'm just going to run something like an Imager plugin. And you can do this with other multi-bands, but let's just do an Imager, and I'm going to solo one particular frequency range. So let's say, okay, I'm going to only solo this range. So we come over. So let me just, I'm going to assign all these to like a pre-group here, like a pre-bus just for, or I'll do it on my drums here just. So I'm going to add group channel to the selected, or let me just add 2 group channels here. All right, so I'm going to select all of my drums. Let's get to the sends here, and I'm going to say let's activate Q-Link. So I want to send these to group 1. And to group 2. Put these on absolute, and I'll put it at 0 dB on all those. So now all of our drums are going to group 1, and group 2 I will just kill this insert. so I'll take that off, sorry. All right, so now it'll make more sense. All right, so if I want to only do flanging on my drums in the mid-range, so we come here, we can see. So now I'll just go to Imager. And on this band, I'm going to solo just this particular band. And let's say we want to do flanging. Make sure I got my routing correct here. So now we could assign just so the flanger is only on those particular frequencies instead of all the frequencies. So if we solo this group is unaffected, and then we could combine it with, so if we want to do it on all the frequencies, we could combine that, or now we could just solo this particular frequency and then insert after, like if I wanted to put a delay, so it's only going to be those particular frequencies. So this way we have the Imager plugin that's isolating the particular frequencies, and then the effects that come after it are only being processed on those particular frequencies. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see Vishnu from India says, Cubase 13 Pro user question, how to assign keyboard shortcuts to Project Logical Editor macros. Okay, so if you have a, so Project Logical Editor is probably just going to be a preset as opposed to a macro, but all you have to do is if you go to the Edit menu to Key Commands, so let's say I have different Project Logical Editor presets here, so I'm going to we'll go to the category. You'll see category called Process Project Logical Editor. So at this point you could come over here and now just assign a key command to each of the presets that you create. You could then assign a specific keyboard shortcut to that particular preset that you've made. So once again, go to your Edit menu, to Key Commands, and find a category, Process Project Logical Editor. If you're doing MIDI Logical Editor, you have a separate category for the MIDI Logical Editor, or just a regular Logical Editor, or the Project Logical Editor. Click, and then you could assign a key directly there. All right, so about 30 minutes from our live stream trivia. Michael Team says, thanks, Greg, for using Dark Glass. I always liked that song. Thanks for writing such a cool tune. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right. All right, so we see Studio 7 Casimo. I want to buy an Apollo Twin X and use it with Cubase 13. Does Windows handle Thunderbolt without issues, or is it preferable to buy USB 3 version? So it could be a lot trickier to get Thunderbolt to work consistently on Windows platform, whereas I think USB 3. So I'm not sure if there's a huge difference in the processing or the latency between the two. I would think that USB 3 might have more longevity. So I run Thunderbolt interfaces on my studio PC, but I had to really kind of go out of my way to get one that worked with USB 4 and Thunderbolt. Whereas I think USB 3 you could get and not have to worry about it. So, all right, so Michael Teams out granting ice cream. See, the Jazz Dude's gotten 1 gallon of Kahlua mocha ice cream. Makes me want to go to Maui. See, JVI says he loves it. In the download assistance, we can see all the products I own. Excellent improvement. So you see that Nick is abstaining from the quiz today, so someone else can win. He's just always he's always pays attention really well. So. All right, so we have a question from Ash Rebel Hen Studios. Greg, is there any way to instruct the chord track to play a different sound that is not in the first slot of the Hallian instruments, say the 9th slot? I can't find this preference. So if we have, I'll just add an instrument track here. So let's say we have Hallian Sonic. And let's say I want... So let's say I have a piano on channel 1 here. All right, and let's say I have I'll add a MIDI track, and let's put this on channel 9. So add track. All right. So we'll come over here, and let's say we want to load an instrument here, so let's do a taped vibe. All right, so now we have an instrument on channel 9, and we have an instrument on channel 1. So if I want to play the chord track and have it play slot 9, I think it's really just dependent on what is selected. So if my chord track is active, now if I select this channel that's going out to channel 9, it plays back through the roads of the selected channel. So if you wanted to switch, you could add a MIDI track, route it to the same MIDI output port as your other instrument, or just change the actual MIDI channel right here, but it's kind of whatever is selected is what. So if I have both of them selected here, we can now just see, and both of them will sound. So let me know if that helps, and great to see you on from Brisbane, Australia. We realize it's very early there, or very late. All right, so we see about the documentary, probably about the 90s, says in the same documentary had a EMU vintage keys, Roland JD990 to Akai S3200s. How would they have mapped the vocal parts to specific notes in the MIDI sequence? So probably not. At that point, most people would probably be using, it's very common to have an ADAT for having the vocals. In a pinch, what a lot of people would do, and I would see this, I was doing like early hip hop stuff in the early 90s, not too far from this time frame. Sometimes people would sample the vocals, like, if so, maybe a vocal hook may be sampled, so a lot of times when people, try to do analysis, I was kind of witness to kind of a very academic analysis of hip hop music in a discussion during an orchestral concert that I did, because we did a concerto for beatbox, and it kind of came up. The question was, why is there so many short repeated things? And they gave a very scholarly answer to it, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's because the sampler didn't have a lot of RAM, so they would just have very short repeated samples often. So a lot of times vocals would be on tape at that time period. And if you wanted to do vocal tuning, it was, common to fly note into the Akai sampler, line up the MIDI note to trigger the sample in time, and draw in pitch bend. So that's probably how the vocals are probably done on tape, especially on the Atari. In the Atari, you could, there was early hard disk recorders for the Atari. So in the Atari, you could use the Yamaha CBX D5. So it was kind of the first major collaboration audio and MIDI between Steinberg and Yamaha, which obviously led to Steinberg being acquired by Yamaha later. But it was probably, my guess would be, is probably done on tape for vocals. But I remember getting 4 tracks of audio with my Atari with the Yamaha CBX D5. Cost $3,000. Okay. See, Jazz D talking about his K1, saying it was a poor man's DX7 or M1. I think it was really more of a poor man's D50 at the time. So I still have one, my K1 too. So seems like Got Your had one too. All right. So we see from Jay from Secret Studio says, "Hi Greg, general engineering question. While I understand that normalizing all audio risks increasing noise to audible levels, are there additional normalization risks I should be aware of?" So, what it can do is, it could amplify, what's in the file. So you may not have heard noise or, like hiss from a mic preamp that was captured that might be more accentuated after you normalize it, but also you could lose some of the dynamic range. So if you have something that was very soft and loud and you wanted to maintain those dynamics between the different elements of your project, that could be affected that could be something that could be affected, have an adverse effect when normalizing the audio file. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin with his dog Stella. Everyone say woof to Stella. All right, and we see Brian Sawyer Sr. sending holiday cheers to all from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thank you so much, Brian. Great to have you on the live stream. All right, we see Nick is giving a virtual dog bone to Stella. It's very, very considerate of you, Nick. All right. All right, Mark Rabin saying, is today Zoomy Day? So we'll do it next Friday. That'll be the last live stream of the year. So we'll stop on the 22nd. But we will be doing trivia in about 19 minutes to win some prizes. All right, so we see Got Your just saying that he was able to get his M1 and he worked at Goodman Music in LA. So miss going to Goodman's. All right, so we have, is it Vahi just sending warm greetings from Armenia. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Dwight Cunningham checking in from the Bahamas. Thanks for being on, Dwight. Glad you could join us. Mark Rabin says Stella, his dog, really wants you to hit the like button. So, and Stella's a beautiful dog, so we should all listen to Stella. All right, so we see a question, will the Apollo X USB 3 be sufficient for my projects? I'm a bit concerned about low latency management. I've heard it has significant impact on the CPUs. I think you'd be fine. But yeah, I mean, I run, my system with USB 3, and I run it under 2 milliseconds of latency with the AXR4U. It's a Steinberg interface. All right, so we see Mark Rabin with kind words. Thank you so much, Mark. It means a lot. All right, so from Kai Wen Franklin, Greg, do you know if it's possible to use the lo-fi piano for Halion without the USB key? I upgraded to Halion 7 this week, but I still have to use the USB key for the lo-fi piano. Let's go ahead and take a look. Yep, so lo-fi piano will work. So you may want to look in your My Steinberg account. If you go to steinberg.net, look at your My Steinberg, and you may see a voucher that would allow you to migrate from the USB e-licenser over to Steinberg licensing. So yeah, that is available on Steinberg licensing. And great to see you on, Kai. All right, so Mark Raven says it'd be cool if Cubase, there was a way to tell Cubase you were making this type of song like improv or techno or space yoga and something that would suggest ideas. Just a thought. So, but then would Steinberg get the copyright information? So just kidding. All right. All right, so Gregory just says, just giving a Christmas concert to children in Budapest. I used Cubase to do a lot to do, prepare arrangements and scores. The concert was a great success. Thanks, Steinberg. That's wonderful. Thanks for letting us know. It's always great to be involved with projects like that. All right, so Bruno Pack says, how to control the cutoff with velocity in Halion using the MIDI input transformer. So I think that, you might not need to use so let's come over to kind of a synth. Let me just... see if we can do it here. All right, so let's just bypass the arpeggiator for now. All right, so I was just kind of playing around with this myself. Let's see if there's... I'll show you just how you could do it kind of in I'll show you I know how to do I think we could do this pretty easily in Retrolog, and it could depend on the instrument in Halion. But let's say if we have, we'll just start with a couple oscillators here, maybe a sub. Okay. All right, let me just. All right, that's fine. All right, so if we come over, like, we could just adjust kind of the velocity level here. So if here, if we go into the velocity or go into the filter envelope, so let's say we wanted to adjust kind of more of the cutoff with velocity, we could just kind of show just. So if you hit it very soft, and you could adjust kind of the attack of it as well. So playing the same note. So if I play soft, we get one response. So let me know if that's helpful, and I'm sure you could kind of manually set something up inside of Halion if you're building an instrument, but you could do it very quickly inside of Retrolog, just kind of using the velocity scale within the filter envelopes. All right, so we have Renee just checking in from Quebec. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. See, Mark Raven just says, Greg, I agree on your opinion about Atmos. It's an irony of technology. You always need the newest tech because of competing standards. So, yeah. I guess I invested a lot in the original surround sound, and then Dolby Digital versus DTS, and then you go to anyone's house and they never had their, they had all 5 speakers set up front. It's like, oh, such a great thing, and not really utilized as much as it could be. Hopefully it will work. All right, so Gerald Ely says saving a groove into the quantized panel is his tip for the day. All right. See, Mark Raven just says he remembers the cassette days, and someone would print Dolby and not mark it, and then it would sound horrible. So yeah. All right, so Val says, I will write a mail regarding Groove Agent problem. Yes, send it to Club Cubase at Steinberg.de. Okay, so Keith Young asks Cubase 13, hello Greg, can I have 2 projects open and drag a track or tracks from one project to the other, or do I have to import them, and how do I do that? Thanks. So if it's going to be just like the content, like the media, all you'd have to do is say, okay, I have this project over here, and I want this file, and we could just kind of drag and drop audio from one project, multiple files or a single file from one project into another project. So I can say, okay, I want these files here to go into, this project. And we could just drag and drop, but that doesn't necessarily carry over all of the settings. So if you had like EQs and inserts and channel strips, all the processing. So if you wanted to just get the media over, you could just simply drag and drop. If you want to include all the settings for the instrument, so you could drag MIDI information, but it doesn't necessarily include what the instrument is or what the instrument settings are for that instrument. So if you wanted to include the settings at this point, we could say, okay, I want to now import tracks from project. We could choose a particular project. Let me just all right, so we'll say I want to incorporate tracks from this particular project. And we open it, and now when we do this, I could incorporate, the settings. We could incorporate routing if we have that, and we could create new tracks. So if you want just like the audio or MIDI information over, you can drag and drop, but it doesn't contain, the audio will play back, but it won't contain all of the particular processing. So if you want the processing and the instruments to be carried over, then use the import tracks from project, and you can just hit OK. And now all those files will be imported directly into your particular project. And great to see you on, Keith. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Benny asks, hi Greg, do you know if there's something wrong with Wavelab 11 Pro? Can't download it from the Steinberg download assistant. So about 2 weeks ago, there is a new Steinberg download assistant that was released. So make sure that you've updated to the latest Steinberg download assistant. It was kind of a technical reason with servers. It was kind of out of our control, or out of Steinberg's control. So, but just make sure that you have the latest Steinberg download assistant actually installed. All right, so we see Plastic People Records. Sorry, let me just dismiss a reminder here. All right, from 12 Pro, is there a way to get inserts, but more like before, show a few empty versus only one, and then one more, show only one in the first slot used? Is there a way to show four? So when we go to kind of like the new settings here, we wanted, we had lots of complaints from people that, they open up their inserts and then they couldn't see their fader, they couldn't see sends. People, I can't see sends and inserts at the same time. So this is why it was kind of set up this way. If you go to the lower zone mix console, you could see all of your multiple inserts here. So if you wanted to just, select a particular plugin, but on the insert, this was kind of specifically designed for a +1 type of environment. If you go to the main mix console, there's settings here for the inserts. So if you have inserts, we could choose to, have a +1, or let's say if we, let's see where the little drop down, let's go to the settings. So if we say, I think it's might be in here. So we could say when you go to section settings, you could say fixed number of slots for inserts. So you could have it set there. If you have problems, like let's say if you have like a plugin over here and you want it to be post fader, like, you know, all you have to do is right click and you could say, you know, set as, you know, move to a post fader slot, and then that will automatically give you more slots depending, unless you have by default the actual, you know, depending on where your default pre-post fader insert is. So, you know, a quick way of doing that is just to, and I think even if we didn't do that, I'll just undo that we could just say show as the last pre-fader insert slot, and then you could at that point see, you know, two different ones. So, but, you know, it's really kind of designed to be expedited so that you could, you know, just very easily see your different effects. So try just to right click and say show as or move to the post fader slot, and then you'll see more insert slots available. Okay, so we see from Steve Cross says, hi Greg, Steve from Kent in England here. Apologies, it's just been asked before, but I've just installed the trial version of Cubase 13, and in the media bay, nearly all of the loops have a no entry. So often what you could do is just, you know, if you go to media bay, often just kind of going to like your factory content and just, you know, let's say, or I'm sorry, go to your VST sound, and then, you know, rescanning the disc will often do the trick. It could also be, depending which version that you're jumping up from, you know, it could be sometimes there's a media bay, little media bay installation file, and if you download that, that will often kind of fix the problems. Like if you jump over and you don't see like different library folders here. So let's say if you go to your VST instruments and you go to Hallion and you're not seeing like your different libraries here, then that could be just like a little media bay installation that's kind of out of sync. But also just try to come here and right click and just rescan the disk and see if that does it for you as well. We hope you enjoy your Cubase 13 trial. All right, so we see uninstall in the Access Manager seems to always just tell me to reinstall all sounds versus what's new. Is something going on? Not reading what I have. Don't want to double install space. So it won't necessarily double install space, but it can. There are different versions, like if you're going from the USB e-licenser to, you know, to the Steinberg licensing, the content needs to be updated to work with the new licensing scheme. All right, so it's 4 o'clock. We're 3 hours in. Let's do some Club Cubase trivia. All right, so we'll be, again, winning prizes if you win. How this will work, I'll ask the question. I will look at the live chat. Let me just switch my computer screen here real quick. All right, let's look at the live chat here. All right, I'll mute that. All right, so how this will work, I'll ask a question. It's going to be a kind of a trivia question about the live stream or attendees. If the live stream question is about you, if we could refrain from answering if it's a question that's related to you, that would be appreciated. If you are a winner at that point, you can send me, like, if you're like, okay, I want, maybe this instrument. If you haven't updated to Cubase 13 yet, we can, we'll be a little bit flexible. I don't want to necessarily give you a Cubase 13 update if you purchased it last week. That doesn't make much sense. So we could be a little flexible with, so if you want to pick an instrument or something like that, we can work it out for you. So, but let's go ahead and get started. So once again, if the question is related to you, if we could refrain from answering it. All right. Whose father was a food chemist and worked for Hershey and Nestle, a live stream attendee? Whose father was a food chemist and worked for Hershey and Nestle? All right, so let's see if we have people responding to that. So once again, a question. Whose father was a food chemist and worked for Hershey and Nestle? So we see Michael, some people are answering Michael Teams. No. See Benny saying Mick. No. This is kind of a hard one. Until Truth is saying Jazz Dude. All right, so it's not Michael Teams. All right, I know this is a hard one. Just mentioned once. If we don't get it, we'll move on. See, Ash Rebel Hen Studios saying, dang it. All right. We'll give it another minute or so, another 30 seconds. And if not, we'll move on. All right. Secret Studios saying Graham Witcher. Nope. John Barry. Nope. Nope. Wasn't my father. Oh, Nick is saying he knows, but he's not answering. All right. So Ash Rebel Hen Studio says, how about Greg Undo? So it wasn't my father. He worked in kind of aerospace. He was kind of a smart rocket scientist kind of guy. So we see Gerald Ely saying Jeff. Says, I don't remember last name. So it wasn't Jeff. Got yours saying Sable Winters. So it wasn't Jeff Sabelski. All right, we'll give it. All right, so we'll move on from that question. So Nick, if you want to answer the question, Nick pays really good attention, pays attention very well in class. We'll see if Nick can answer. So it's not Tim, it's not Pablo. We'll see if Nick knows the answer. We'll give him an honorary win if he does. All right, so we see Benny saying John. We'll see if you can get a last name. So Michael Pierce. No, we'll see. Nick is saying John Costigan. That's right. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Very good, Nick. Nick must have been a good student in school. All right, so the next question. This one is really hard. We'll see. Who mentioned that they watched the show MASH during lunch, the classic 70s 80s TV show about Korean War? Who's mentioned that they watched the show MASH during lunch? And again, if this is you, if we could refrain from asking. You're just saying Nick has a great memory. So who watches the show MASH during lunch? All right, so Got Yours saying, I guess Nick. Nick is the correct answer. So Got Your, if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, We will, and just kind of let me know if there's a particular title you want, and we'll see if we could get it for you. Give me like 2 or 3 titles that you would want. But yes, the answer is Nick. All right, good job. Who got your? Okay. Next question. What town lived in by a regular attendee did I always drive through when visiting my favorite aunt? So what town lived in by regular Club Cubase attendee did I always drive through when visiting my favorite aunt? And if this involves you, refrain from asking. All right, let's see if this answer comes in. See, Jazz Dude says, funny you watched MASH last week. Still a great show. All right. All right, so it's Sable Winters saying Weatherford. So again, what town lived in by a regular attendee did I always drive through when visiting my favorite aunt? I usually mention it when they're on. Didn't mention it today. See, Oklahoma, Buffalo, nope, Weatherford. This is a hard one too, but he's a pretty loyal attendee. It's not Dallas. See, Benny is just saying hard. All right, so you see Secret Studios just saying Louisiana. Seidel, nope. It's not Miami. Not Nashville. Let's see, it's not Delaware. All right, we'll give it another minute and see if there's anyone who is. It's not Nashville. It's not Langley. It's a good guess, John. We see Helsinki. It's not that. Sable saying Arlington. Nope. But my cousin, who is her son, lives in Arlington. All right, see Vienna, Austin, not Buffalo, Austin, or Memphis. All right, Topanga. Nope, not Topanga. In California. Not Richmond. All right, I'll give it another minute and then we'll move on. It's not Cleveland, Ohio. Not North Carolina. All right, it's not Whitney or Houston. My brother lives in Houston. Let's see, Plastic People Records asking what's the place in Texas big on music. All right, so it's not Austin, it's not in Texas, it's not in Fort Lauderdale. Mark Rabin saying Chicago, New York, LA, Denver, Phoenix, Las Vegas. Not Tupelo, not Tallahassee, New Orleans, not New Orleans, not Atlanta. All right, Laurel, that's pretty good guess, but not it. Not Richmond, not Toledo. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. So the answer to that was Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. So my aunt and uncle lived in Schuylkill Haven. So we used to always drive through Pine Grove, where Music for World Peace Records Taylor is from. So, all right, we will go ahead and move on to the next question. This is just from the last live stream. We just... It is, which audio engineer has Greg recently mentioned that developed a 5.1 surround listening system for automobiles? Which audio engineer has Greg recently mentioned that developed a 5.1 surround listening system for automobiles? All right, let's see. Still getting answers to the previous one. All right, so once again, which audio engineer have I recently mentioned that developed a 5.1 surround listening system for automobiles? All right, so it's not the car, but the audio engineer who developed it. So you see Pylon Records saying Mark Levinson. That's not it. You see Ash Rebel Hen Studio saying Fraunhofer. All right. All right, it's not Andrew Sheps. It's not Yamaha. So again, the audio engineer. It's not Steve Hoffman. So again, which audio engineer has Greg recently mentioned that developed a 5.1 surround listening system for automobiles? I believe it was just mentioned it on Tuesday. Not George Massenberger, not Ciccarelli. All right, Ascending Planes has the correct answer, Elliot Shiner. So that is the correct. So he developed the L's system that did 5.1 in DTS and Dolby Digital for Acura cars, the ELS L's. So congratulations, Ascending Planes. So again, send me an email with a couple of titles that you want, and we'll try to get that. So send the email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, let's go to our next question. Next question. Which guitarist has Greg mentioned that uses 3 cabinets for recording with the center cabinet free of effects? So again, which guitarist has Greg mentioned that uses 3 cabinets for recording with the center cabinet free of effects? Just spoke with this guitarist last night. All right, John Costigan, Frampton. That is the correct answer. Congratulations, John, on winning. All right. So congratulations, John. So if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, let me know if there's a title you want. So we try to get it to you. If you get your emails in, the person that I'm getting the titles from is going on vacation Tuesday. So if you know, so it's Got Your Ascending Planes, I think. And John Costigan, if you want to email me, at that point, we could, just email me a couple of the titles you want. If you need like an update from 12 to 13 or something like that, just let me know. So again, email me clubcubase@steinberg.de. Let me know if you want to do one more question just as a freebie for everyone. Let me know if you want one more question. We'll just wait and see if people want one more question. Yes, I was just helping Peter last night with a little setup. See, Sable is sad. So, all right. So Val wants one more question. So I don't have an extra prize, but we'll just do this for bragging rights. So for bragging rights, the next question is: which film composer inspired the new step entry features in Cubase 13? So which film composer inspired the new step entry features in Cubase 13? We see Hans Zimmer's response, so it's not Hans Zimmer. Hans is a lot of people entering that. So it's not Hans Zimmer. All right, we'll just give it another minute here. All right, so we just... It's not Trent Reznor. It's not Fred. All right, Gerald Ely is correct for bragging rights with Alan Silvestri. Congratulations, Gerald. All right. All right, so with that, thanks, and we just want to do something nice for the holiday season, and we appreciate all the great attendees from people that are doing, that are involved with the live streams. All right, so we see Mark Raven just says another question. Let's see if we can do one more question. I think I may have one. All right. You know, we have our Zoom social meetups, which we're doing next Friday. Here's a question. Name one of the two special Club Cubase social Zoom meetups where we've had attendees that have worked with Bob Dylan. We've had two different people as kind of featured people on the Zoom social meetups that have worked with Bob Dylan. If we could name those two, again, for bragging rights. All right. So we see Sable saying Tim Hinckley. So I don't think Tim he's worked with almost everyone. I don't think he's worked with Bob Dylan. So two of the featured speakers we've had. It's not Conan O'Brien. I've worked with Bob Dylan. So I haven't worked with Bob, so I haven't met him, but I know people who have. All right, we'll see if anyone gets this. All right, so Nick is the first one with the correct answer with Ted Perlman. All right. Congratulations, Nick. You win bragging rights. All right, so we'll move on back to our questions. Thanks, everyone, for participating. And for those that have won, congratulations. So Ascending Planes, I believe, got and John Costigan sent me an email, and be happy to get those, get the codes kind of sent out for you. All right, so with that, we'll jump back to our normal questions here. Thanks. I hope everyone enjoyed that. So, and let me know if you want to do more. Like, we could try to do a live stream question of, once a week or so, if it's fun for you. All right, let me jump back. Congratulations to the winners. Okay. And if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right. Okay. Okay, just finding my spot. All right. All right, so we see from Kai Wen Franklin, says, just tried to open my project and I get no valid license found for lo-fi piano. So make sure that you after installing it, that if you go to your activation manager, just open up your activation manager here, and then we can, make sure it's not showing up as not activated. And you can see if it shows up in your activated programs here. But if you see it in not activated, just click on activate, and then that should get it up and running for you. All right, so you see from Keith Young, it says I reinstalled Hallian Sonic 7 and content, but still have problem removing the dongle without losing studio strings and Eagle piano. What have I missed? Thanks. So again, I'm not sure if you had that if you have that licensed in Hallian or Hallian Sonic. There was a Hallian Sonic 3 that was a paid program in Hallian. So to run it without the USB-E licenser, you would need to, have an Absolute 6 license or a Hallian 7 license. So make sure, and if you have those licenses and those programs are running kind of as expected, you may have to reinstall the content because the content would utilize the USB-E licenser. So again, reinstalling those particular libraries could, will probably make the difference for you. Okay, the artist known as Love from New York wants everyone to hit the like button, please. All right. All right, so you see Lo-Fi Piano is not in my Steinberg Activation Manager, so make sure that you have gone through the whole process of the voucher to transfer it, to your Steinberg licensing. Okay. See, Nick says he won Absolute 6 earlier and often gets to use the Grand. All right. It's a great piano. Sable Winters wants people to hit the thumbs up button. All right, let me just jump back here real quick. My chat field just jumped. All right, so I may have lost a couple of questions. We had a lot of responses with the, so sorry, I had some questions that disappeared since we had a lot of questions during the trivia. All right. All right, so we see from Steven, hi Greg, can you briefly go through the profile upgrade to Cubase 13 process? Does it include hardware profiles? So when you say the profile upgrade to the Cubase 13 process, so if you're going from Cubase 12 to Cubase 13, all of your settings, with your hardware profiles, should automatically be maintained. So if you wanted to come over here to, your, if you're for your hardware profiles, if you have this set up for different controllers and for your MIDI remote, all of that will just automatically carry over from version 12 for you. So I realize we may have missed out on a number of questions. So if you have those questions, please feel free to ask them again in the chat field. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes I can only hold so many questions in a buffer before, and we had lots of questions and comments from the trivia. All right, so Nancy asks how to save your own keyboard shortcuts in Cubase. So all you have to do is go to your edit menu, and if we go to key commands at this point, and this is Windows slightly different in 13 versus 12, but you could find your function. You could search for a function. So let's say, okay, I want to find a key command for select none. And then at this point, you can see the function and just double click here and type in the key. And that's how you could assign your keyboard shortcuts. So you can look kind of by all of the different menu options here. So if you say, okay, let's get to your, I want to trigger a macro, or I want to open the hub, I want to go to my devices menu, to the video player. You can just select a function and then click there to add the keyboard shortcut. You can see which are unassigned, which are customized, and which are assigned, like kind of factory assigned. So you could look right there. Okay. All right, just going through all the trivia questions here. All right, just going through. All right. All right, so we see from Anna Christina, a dear friend named Anna Christina, which preset in VST amp rack achieves a neo soul guitar effect? So let's take a look. Let's see, I think I may have just a blank guitar part here. Let's take a look. It's probably not a neo soul guitar part, but all right, so I'll just take a dry guitar part. All right, so let's say we'll take this and let me bypass the VST amp rack. Let's take the automation off here real quick. So clean phaser might be a good choice. If you use kind of the wah-wah pedals to some of the clean. So like funky phaser could be good. So some of the jazz presets, so some of these I think would work well. So check out some of those, but if you kind of come over here and if we choose, some of the different clean sounds, you'll see a lot of great choices there. So check some of those out. Right, so we see Untold Truth asks, is there a way to have the patterns recorded using the chord pad? Only the chord is recorded, not the pattern. All right, so let's come over and we'll jump off to this project here. All right, sorry about that. Let me just revert. Okay, so we'll come over here. So let's say we have a Rhodes patch and we go to our chord pads. And I'm just going to come over here to the pattern. See, I'll just do a new project here real quick. Sorry about that. All right, so let's say, right, so I want to come over here to the patterns. So let's say we'll just give some of the factory patterns here. So let's say, all right, so if we want to record those particular patterns, all you'd have to do is just kind of, we'll say, okay. And I'll just take it out of loop. Sorry about that. And then what the pattern is, once you hit record, at that point, the actual chords will just kind of show up directly in the particular MIDI events as if you had kind of played them. So just hit record, and then from your MIDI keyboard, just hit the notes to trigger the patterns, and the pattern is then recorded. All right, so we see Plastic People Records. So it says, so if I upgraded to 6 absolute from 4, do I just reinstall everything and switch to non-USB first? So that'll work. I think, some of the licenses for that may, you could try to just run the absolute 6 and see which instruments aren't loading up without the e-licenser. You may be able to just do it as opposed to individual elements. So the absolute 6 license can kind of take over. So you could try that, but you could also just, reinstall everything quickly if something isn't working. All right, so we see Michael Pierce joining us. So glad you can make it. And we see that Mark Ravensdog Stella says, woof, that Cubase is delicious. All right. All right, so Val says that he and Sable will win next time. All right. Michael Pierce has slapped the like button. So DJFK asks, I run out of space. Any recommendations for a cheap SSD hard drive? So if you're looking for external, I think like the Samsung, was it like a T5 or T7? A lot of people like those. But, I think that overall, especially now in holiday season, there's lots of great hard drive stuff that's available. All right. And we're sorry Michael Pierce missed the trivia. All right, I know we had some questions that were sent in, so let's get to those before we run out of time. All right, so we had a question on how to record multi-track drums when using VST Connect Pro. So let me just jump to this. Okay, so I'm going to just add some audio tracks here. So let's say, okay, I'm going to add a couple. We'll add, or I'll just do it this way. So I'm going to go to my VST Connect Pro, and you can do this. So with Connect Pro, you get up to 16 channels at once. So I'm going to create a VST Connect. Okay. Okay, and what you need to do is I'll just go ahead and you go to the VST Connect Performer software, and I'll just show this on both sides. So we'll say, let's come over here. All right, and I'll just kind of do this for demonstration purposes. So when you want to record multiple instruments, what you need to do first is I'll come over here. We're just going to kind of log in on both. Come over here to Cubase, and we'll make sure that we are logged in. And now we will make sure. Okay, so I'm going to right click here. So now we are connected to each other. So what we want to do in Cubase is we'll see just this little setting here, and we'll see, just ignore it. So I'm going to, now if we want to record like a full drum set, like let's say, 8 or 9 channels or however many mics you want, you'll just kind of click here on the plus sign, okay? And what we want to do is to assign your audio inputs. You'll see, and this is the audio inputs from the Performer software. So if they have, 8 inputs, you could select, this to be stereo or this to be mono. So you want to, again, click on the plus signs, click on this part of the window, click on the plus signs for all the inputs that you want. In the top, come over here and just choose your which input or output port. So if you want it to be mono or stereo, you'll see all the available inputs and outputs listed here. Now, when we add a Performer record track, we will go ahead and record. This will record a stereo channel, kind of all mixed down in real time. So, but obviously the question is how to get the actual independent files. So the independent files are recorded onto the Performer's computer. And once they are done recording, what you would do is inside of Cubase, to get the multi-tracks over, as soon as you do that, you'd want to come over. Again, we'll say, okay, let's go to your settings, and then you'll click on, you'll see all of the recordings come here, and you'll see get HD files. And what that'll do is that will transfer all of the multi-tracks over. So when you do it live, it's going to basically transmit just a stereo file. And then when you say get the HD files, that will take the original split up multi-tracks that have been defined with the different inputs and output routing, the different input routing in this window. And you could do this for the customer. And then once you hit the get HD files, that will automatically place those files in your timeline for you as the multi-tracks. So again, you want to come over here, click on the plus sign to add the additional audio inputs and set the routing by clicking at the top here. And then once the recording is done, just come over here, click on Get HD Files. All right, so we had a question of how to enter, this is from last week, how to enter a tempo change at the cursor position with a keyboard shortcut. All right, so I was trying to do this in the Project Logical Editor, and I think I figured it out. So let's say I'm at measure 49, and I have my tempo map active. So let's go to the Project Logical Editor, and let's come over here. Let's get to setup. So we can say, all right, so I kind of worked this out. So we want to do first do an edit, select none. So I'll just come over here. So we have our tempo map, and then I want to choose select. We're going to choose container type is equal to track, and we want the media type to be equal to tempo track. So what we're going to do is to first select nothing, then select the tempo track. And we're going to set up these post conditions. We're going to navigate right. We're going to edit, copy, edit, paste, and then under transport, you'll see input tempo. So right now, if I wanted to put a tempo in, I click apply. Our tempo field lights up here. I type in the tempo value, say 140, and hit enter. And now that tempo is added at that particular position. If I come here, I want my tempo to change right at measure 81. I hit apply. The tempo field is open. I say, okay, let's make it 88 beats a minute. So now as soon as I go through, wherever my cursor is, we can now insert a particular tempo change right there. So again, we want to do select. Our pre-process would be to select nothing. Then we want to select the tempo tracks. We're going to navigate right, copy, paste, and then input the tempo position. All right, and we had a question from the last live stream about routing tracks that are within folders to a particular output. So let's say I have a folder here for strings, and within my folder I could have, let's say, a subfolder. We'll say high strings, and then I have a folder for low strings. All right, so the question was to have this selected and to have all of the tracks within the selected strings folder and their subfolders, the tracks within the subfolders, to switch to a different output. So I'm just going to come over here. So the first thing, I use a combination of two different Project Logical Editor presets. So the first one, I think I just called it. We could do this using two different ones. So the first one I did was we wanted to go to our project and set project toggle selected track, and that will take our track here, toggle it, and then we're going to say the container type is equal to folder track, and we want to select the property is set to parent object is selected. And we did this also with a different setting. So let's say, I think we go to, all right, and at this point, I said in our second part of this is we're going to take the container type that's a folder track. We're going to take the tracks that are selected and the tracks within that track, and we're going to route it to bus 2, this particular output, and then we're going to close the folder track. All right, so I'm going to make sure I have a bus 2 in my outputs. All right, so we do. So if I did this right, what I do now is I'm going to combine those two Project Logical Editor presets into a into a macro. So we'll call this, let's see what I called it. All right, just find the macro of those two functions. All right, let me just all right, I'll just make a new macro of it. Sorry. Okay, so we want to do just see if I all right, I'll just make it real quick, sorry. All right, so we're going to add this command. And then the other one is going to be folder routing, so we're going to add that command. Okay, so now when I come over here, I have this particular, let's say I have my strings and I have my winds. So I'm going to select my strings folder. Let's run the macro. So if I do this correctly, we can come over here and now let's go look at our strings folder and we can see that all of my high strings are now routed to bus 2. My low strings are routed to bus 2. And the winds, even though they're in their folders, are still routed to the same output. So again, just come over to the Project Logical Editor and go to, you can set this for the project folder routing, make that condition, and make another one for that does this first. And when we go to the fold setup, so run those two together as a macro, and then you'll be all set. All right, so we see I'm experiencing a problem in Cubase 13 Max Studio. I'm routing to my individual tracks out to a summing mixer via an Apollo 8XP or XAP. I then send the sends the stereo back into Cubase, rack named summing return. The summing then feeds directly to my main mix bus. The problem is sometimes my main mix bus somehow gets approximately 18 dB louder than the summing return. At other times, the two of them are within 1 dB of each other. 1 dB. Last night it was a later situation. Then this morning I reopened the project and the main mix bus was minus 18 dB louder than the summing return bus. I didn't change anything between last night and this morning, so I don't understand what's causing this. There are no inserts on either bus. So a lot of times when there's kind of inadvertent gain or unexpected gain, the one area I would look at is, when everything looks the same in Cubase, is to make sure that the mixer within your audio interface isn't adding gain. That's where I would look, just to make sure, like if you see, like the gain, like the meters kind of look normal on the way out, and if you see it looking normal on your summing device, if there's metering, I would think that the gain could easily be added on, like within the mixer for your audio interface. That's where I would look. Okay, so we see a quick question. I just installed a reverb plugin, Overloud's Reverb 2, and it got categorized as other in my list of plugin effects. I'd much prefer it to be in the reverb category that already exists in Cubase. Is there a way to move it? So, sometimes I would always reach out to the plugin developer and ask them to characterize their plugin for the VST3. If you don't want to wait for that to happen, what you could do is go to your VST plugin manager, and we could create something called a plugin collection. So we see this little plus sign in the upper left-hand corner. What you could do is we want to copy the current collection. So let's say we're over here. We'll call this December 15th. Okay, and let's say we could just see, oh, my reverb is here, and I have something that's in other. So let's say I want it. I have something like, let's say this vocoder. I could just right click over here and say delete. And let's say I want to put that vocoder into a different area. What we could do is open up my reverb category here, and I could just take the towel vocoder that I moved and I'm just drag it over, and I could place it into my own categories, and you could create your own categories using the VST plugin manager. So once you go to your studio, to VST plugin manager, click on the plus sign, and from there you could just simply choose to reorder and reorganize the plugins. But you could start off by copying, and then you could just take it from the other and recategorize. All right, so he says, I see a question. I have a keyboard that has polyphonic aftertouch, polypressure MIDI signal, which doesn't work with my OP-X3 plugin that only responds to regular monophonic aftertouch. I tried to convert the polypressure signal to aftertouch using the project input transformer in Cubase Pro, but didn't get it to work. Can it be done for live playing? Best regards. So if the instrument itself doesn't respond to polyphonic aftertouch, which a lot of instruments don't, then I don't think you're going to get any benefit from it. A lot of instruments don't respond to aftertouch, and it could be just kind of a design of the instrument. It's a lot more. I imagine it would be a lot more complex of an instrument from a development standpoint to respond to polyphonic aftertouch. So it's been around for 30-40 years, but not a lot of instruments really employ it. So if the instrument isn't going to respond to it, I think converting it to aftertouch isn't going to give you any benefit, and any controller that has polyphonic aftertouch will probably just have regular aftertouch as well. So I think it's going to be a limitation of the actual device. All right, so we had a question. Is there a way to slice MIDI patterns like audio loops in Groove Agent? So once you have, MIDI patterns in Groove Agent, so let's say we'll come over, add an instrument track here. So let's do Groove Agent SE. So once we have a pattern, so let's say we come over here to our patterns, so generally you don't necessarily have to slice, but if you wanted like that pattern to only be, one measure instead of two, what you can do now is just kind of drag that pattern and replace that pattern. So when you drag it out, so you could just kind of drag and drop the patterns, but since the MIDI stuff is so easily editable in a project window, it's not, as analogous as kind of creating slices, because you can cut your MIDI part, however you want and be able to easily edit it, not based on transients. All right, so we see a question. Please, how to get the zoom at cursor position features visually synchronized with both main and editor windows, because it looks like it's not automatic for me at the moment and need to adjust every time. All right, so if we have a particular event here, so if it's with the lower zone window, when you double click, we could zoom and these will be in sync. So with the MIDI editors, they're perfectly in sync unless this button is turned off. So when we come, we can now zoom independently, which you may want to do at times, but if you wanted those to the MIDI editor to be synchronized, the lower zone MIDI editor to be synchronized with the project window, which makes a lot of sense for the MIDI. We could think of this as a natural extension. We can now, as we enable this icon right here, turn that on. All right, so we see a question, is there a way to create a project logical editor to move a track name perk track inside the drum track folder and assign it to the drum bus in the folder and change the color of the track as well? So I don't know of a way to take a track and move it into the folder. When you go to add a particular track into a folder, one of the things you can do is as you add, let's say an instrument track, you could just click right here, give it a name, and at this point you say, okay, we call this perk, and then that instrument track is automatically created within the folder. You could have preference to automatically name it, but I don't know of a way to take, and I'll keep seeing if I come up with some way of doing it, but if we just go to add the track within the folder to initially start, then that will be in a folder. You could have it automatically assume the colors, and there's macros that your project logical editor like we just did to do the routing if necessary. All right, so with that, we are just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions. Congratulations to the winners on the Club Cubase live stream trivia. We will be back Tuesday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern, and our last live stream for the year will be Friday, next 1 week from today, with the Zoom social meetup, and we look forward to seeing many new faces. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we will see everyone back on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Goodbye.